In the city of Zamora, where old red earth met rising glass towers, people believed that wealth gave a person a louder voice. Poverty took one away. Every morning, as the sun climbed slowly from behind the distant hills, its golden light touched the roofs of the rich first, then reluctantly slid down to the narrow streets where men like Caballo lived. Caballo was a driver, not the kind whose name was remembered, not the kind whose presence mattered. People bowed when her convoy passed. Doors opened before she knocked. Laughter followed her words, even when they were cruel. Caballo opened her car door every morning with the same calm movement, his back straight, his eyes lowered not because he felt small, but because that was how he had been raised. In the villages of his childhood, elders taught that silence was not weakness, it was armor. Madame Naledi never asked about his life. To her, Caballo was part of the irreplaceable metal and leather. Sometimes she spoke about him as if he were not there at all. Drivers are lucky, she once laughed to her friends in the back seat. They see luxury every day without ever tasting it. Her friends laughed with her. Caballo said nothing, but inside him lived a quiet world shaped by drum beats, ancestral stories, and long nights under village stars. A world no one in that car could imagine. One evening, Zamora buzzed with excitement. Madame Naledi was hosting a grand elite gathering, a celebration meant to remind everyone who sat at the top of the city's ladder. Invitations were rare. To be invited meant status, power, worth. As Caballo waited by the car, he overheard the laughter again, sharp, careless. "I have an idea," Madame Naledi said, swirling her drink. "Something entertaining." Her friends leaned closer. "I will invite my driver." The laughter exploded like fireworks. "The driver?" Someone scoffed. "Yes," Naledi smiled. "Let him see how real people live. It will be educational." Someone asked, "Will he even know how to hold a glass?" More laughter. Caballo stood only a few steps away. He heard every word. Each laugh struck like dust thrown into the wind momentarily blinding, then gone. Later that night, she handed him the invitation herself. "Be ready on Saturday," she said casually. "You are coming with me." Caballo looked at the thick card, gold letters pressed deep into white paper. His name was written there, his real name. For a moment, something stirred in his chestnut. Anger, not fear, but recognition. As if the ancestors had leaned closer to listen. "Yes, madame," he replied quietly. That night, in his small room at the edge of the city, Caballo lit a single candle. The walls were bare, except for one wooden shelf. From beneath his bed, he pulled out a small, worn cloth bundle, something he had carried since childhood. Inside it lay an old symbol carved in wood, smooth from years of being held. His guardian from the village had once pressed it into his palm and said, "There are doors that only open when humiliation walks ahead of you." Caballo closed his fingers around it now. Outside, the city drums of wealth and arrogance beat loudly, but deeper. Older drums once buried beneath the soil of forgotten villages began to answer. Saturday was coming, and though the invitation was meant to shame him, destiny had already accepted it for another purpose. The city did not know it yet, but a mistake had been made. Before Caballo became a man whose name was swallowed by the city, before polished roads and tall buildings learned the weight of his footsteps, his life began where the land still remembered every child born upon it. The village of Malapo lay cradled between wide plains and ancient hills, where the soil was red like dried blood and sacred like prayer. In Malapo, life moved to the rhythm of the earth. The sun decided when people woke. The drums decided when they gathered, and the elders decided what truths were spoken and which ones were buried. Caballo was born on a night when the wind refused to sleep. Women later whispered that the dogs howled without reason, that the fire crackled louder than usual, that even the moon hid behind clouds. His mother, Amara, labored quietly inside a mud-walled hut while rain threatened but never fell. When Caballo's first cry pierced the night, an elder standing outside gripped his walking stick tightly, as if something long foretold had finally arrived. Amara did not live long after that night. Some said her heart simply gave up. Others said she was taken away before sunrise by men who wore authority like masks and spoke in low voices. No one dared ask questions. In Malapo, asking the wrong question could turn a person into a ghost while still breathing. The child was handed to Mama Tiba, a woman whose hair was white and whose silence carried weight. She was not of Cabello's blood, but when she took him into her arms, she pressed her forehead to his and whispered words no one else heard. "This one is watched," she said, "by more than us." MMATB raised Caballo with firm hands and patient eyes. She taught him how to greet elders properly, how to lower his gaze without losing his dignity, and how to listen when the wind moved through the trees. Hunger visited their home often, but shame never did. Every morning, Caballo fetched water from the river before the sun rose high. He learned to balance the clay pot on his head without spilling a drop, even when his neck ached and his legs trembled. When other boys played, he worked. When they laughed, he watched. Not because he was weak, but because he was learning. At night, they sat by the fire. The village grew quiet except for insects and distant drums. Mama Teba told him stories not to entertain him, but to prepare him. "There are people born wearing crowns," she would say, staring into the flames, "and there are people born carrying them in their shadows. The second kind suffers first." Caballo did not understand, but he remembered. Sometimes, elders came to their hut and spoke in hushed tones. Caballo was sent outside, yet he heard his name carried on the wind. He noticed how conversation stopped when he approached, how eyes followed him longer than necessary. Once, during a naming ceremony, an elder hesitated before calling him forward, his hand shaking slightly. That night, Mama Tebe gave Caballo a small bundle wrapped in old cloth. "Do not open this until the world tries to humiliate you," she said. "And when that day comes, do not fight back. Endure." "Why?" Caballo asked. "Because storms reveal the strength of the roots," she replied. Years later, drought struck Malapo. Hunger turned neighbors into strangers. The elders gathered and made a decision. Caballo would be sent away to the city. They said it was for opportunity. Momitebe knew it was for protection. On the morning he left, she held his face in her hands. "Never beg for respect," she said softly. "Let it come to you." Caballo walked away without looking back, dust rising beneath his feet. Behind him, Malapo returned to silence, its secrets still buried beneath the red earth. But destiny had not forgotten where he came from. It was only waiting for the right moment to remember him. The city did not welcome Caballo. It swallowed him. Zamora was loud in ways Malapo had never been. Horns screamed without apology. People walked fast, eyes fixed forward, as if stopping for even a heartbeat meant falling behind forever. Here, no one asked where you came from. They only wanted to know what you had. Caballo had nothing. His first nights were spent on thin mats in overcrowded rooms, where men slept like stacked firewood, each carrying his own quiet failure. Hunger followed him closely, like a stray dog that refused to leave. He searched for work from sunrise to sunset construction sites, markets, warehouses, but his village accent and worn clothes closed doors before he could knock. When he finally found work as a driver, it was not dignity that hired him, but desperation. He was grateful anyway. Mometabes' words echoed in his mind. Endure. Madame Nolady Kanza entered his life like a sudden storm. She was everything the city admired: sharp, commanding, polished. She spoke, and rooms listened. Supplied well, but she paid without kindness. To her, Caballo was useful only when silent. She corrected the way he stood, the way he opened doors, the way he breathed around her guests. "Drivers should not think," she once said loudly. "Only listen." Her friends laughed. Caballo lowered his eyes. There were moments that cut deeper than hunger ever had. Once, during an important meeting, she blamed him for being Lativan, though traffic had been blocked by a funeral procession. In African culture, funerals were sacred, untouchable. But Naledi cursed the dead without shame. Another time, she accused him of stealing when her bracelet went missing. Guards searched him in front of strangers. When the bracelet was later found inside her own bag, she offered no apology. "Go back to the car," she said coldly. "You smell like embarrassment." That night Caballo sat alone, his chest heavy, his spirit bruised. He could have left. Many times, he thought of leaving, but something inside him older than fear kept him still. The elders of Malapo had not prepared him for comfort. They had prepared him for pressure. Then came the gathering. Naledi announced it proudly, her voice bright with arrogance. An elite celebration meant to display her success. As she spoke, her eyes drifted toward Kabelanot. With respect, Batha Musaman, I will invite you, she said suddenly. It will be fun. Her friends stared, then burst into laughter. A driver among us? One asked. Yes. Naledi smiled. Let him learn his place. The invitation spread through Zamora's upper circles like wildfire. Jokes were made. Bets were placed. Some wondered if he would even show up. Others hoped he would host a log. Caballo heard it all. Each word pressed against him like stones. Yet he did not break. That night, he returned to his small room and sat on the floor, back against the wall. From beneath his bed, he pulled out the cloth bundle Mama Tebi had given him long ago. He did not open it. Instead, he held it against his chest and closed his eyes. Memories flooded back the red earth of Malapo, the firelight stories, the elders' trembling hands, the warning to endure humiliation without bitterness. For the first time, Caballo made a choice. He would go, not to defend himself, not to prove anything, but because something deep within him knew that this suffering was not the end. It was the doorway. As he rose to his feet, a strange calm settled over him. Outside, the city continued its noise, unaware that it was preparing to witness what happens when patience meets destiny. The invitation meant to shame him had already begun to change his path, and Caballo would not turn back. The night of the gathering arrived dressed in gold and arrogance. Zamora's elite quarters shimmered beneath tall lights and polished stone, a place where wealth tried hard to forget the land it once came from. At the entrance of the grand estate, guards stood stiff in tailored uniforms, their eyes trained to recognize power by clothing alone. When Madame Naledi stepped out of her car, wrapped in silk and confidence, the gates opened without hesitation. Then Caballo followed. For a moment, the guards froze. His clothes were simple, clean, and well-fitted, not the rags they had imagined. Still, his presence felt wrong to them, like a drumbeat out of place. In a delicate song, "Who is he?" one guard asked. "My driver," Naledi replied, not even turning back. "He's invited." The word invited hung in the air, heavy with disbelief. Slowly, the gates opened wider, allowing Caballo to step into a world that had never planned to make space for him. Inside, the estate glowed with excess. Tall pillars lined the courtyard. Water flowed endlessly from marble fountains, while, beyond the city, villages rationed every drop. Music played softly, modern instruments mimicking rhythms once born from drums and bare feet. People turned, whispers followed. "That's him. She brought him." "Is this a joke?" Caballo walked behind Naledi with steady steps. His shoulders remained relaxed, his face calm. He had crossed harder thresholds before: hunger, loss, exile. This was only another gate. As they entered the main hall, the contrast sharpened. Men in tailored suits and women draped in jewels held glasses that cost more than Caballo earned in months. Laughter floated freely, careless and loud. Naledi raised her voice, just enough to draw attention. "Everyone," she said with a smile sharp as a blade. "This is Caballo, my driver." The room reacted as expected: laughter, clapping, mock bows. Someone whistled. Another asked loudly if he knew which fork to use. Caballo felt the heat of humiliation rise, but he did not move. In his mind, he heard Mama Teba's voice. "Lower your head, not your spirit." Naledi instructed a waiter to seat him far from the center, near a pillar where servants passed quietly. "Not at a table, not among guests. Make yourself useful," she said lightly, "or at least stay out of the way." Caballo nodded once and moved to the corner. From there, he observed. He watched how people spoke loudly but listened poorly, how wealth sat on them like costumes, not skin. He saw men who ruled boardrooms yet avoided the gaze of elders seated at the far end of the hall, men and women whose clothes were simple, but whose presence commanded silence. One of them noticed Kabbalah. The elder's hair was silver, his posture straight despite age. His eyes rested on Kabbalah longer than comfort allowed. Not with mockery, but with recognition. Their gazes met. For a brief moment, the noise of the hall faded. The elder's eyes narrowed slightly, as if searching memory. Kabbalah felt a strange pull in his chest, something ancient stirring. The elder whispered something to the woman beside him. She looked up sharply. Across the room, Naledi laughed loudly, enjoying the attention. She believed the night was unfolding exactly as planned. She did not see the shift. She did not notice that the air itself had begun to change. As Kabbalah stood quietly near the pillar, the elder rose slowly from his seat. Conversation soft. Heads turned. Respect followed his movement, like shadow. The elder began walking toward Kabbalah, and with each step, the foundation of Naledi's cruel joke began to crack, though she had not yet realized it. The gates had already closed behind Kabbalah. Whatever was about to happen, there would be no easy exit for anyone involved. The elder's footsteps were slow, but every step carried weight. As he moved across the hall, conversations thinned into an easy silence. People who moments ago laughed without care now watched with curiosity and a hint of fear. In African gatherings, elders did not rise without reason. When they moved, it meant the ancestors were listening. Kabbalah felt the gaze upon him before the elder reached his side. He straightened, not in pride, but in respect. He placed his right hand over his left, the way Mometebi had taught him when standing before those older and wiser. The elder stopped in front of him. For a long moment, he said nothing. He studied Kabbalah's face, his posture, the stillness in his eyes. Then his gaze dropped to Kabbalah's hands. "You were raised in a village," the elder said quietly. It was not a question. "Yes," Baba Kabbalah replied. The elder nodded slowly, as if confirming something long suspected. He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only Kabbalah could hear. "Malapo," he said. Kabbalah's breath caught. No one in Zamora knew that name. The elder straightened and turned slightly, addressing the room without raising his voice. "Some roots," he said calmly, "grow deep beneath stone and concrete. You cannot see them, but they are still alive." Whispers spread again, this time confused rather than amused. Naledi frowned. This was not how the night was meant to go. The elder turned back to Kabbalah. "Do you carry anything from your past?" he asked. Kabbalah hesitated. His fingers tightened unconsciously. Slowly, with measured care, he reached inside his jacket and pulled out the small cloth bundle he had carried for years. The elder's eyes widened. Before Kabbalah could open it, the elder raised his hand. "Not here," he said firmly. "Not dit." Across the hall, Naledi stepped forward, irritation creeping into her smile. "Baba," she said sweetly, "is there a problem? This is only my driver." The elder looked at her then, really looked at her. His gaze was not angry, but it was sharp. "Child," he said, "sometimes the one holding the door carries the key." The room fell silent. Naledi laughed nervously. "You are being poetic." The elder did not smile. He turned back to Kabbalah. "Come," he said gently. "Walk with me." Kabbalah obeyed without hesitation. As they moved toward a quieter section of the estate, people parted instinctively. The laughter was gone now, replaced by confusion and discomfort. Naledi stood frozen, watching control slip through her fingers. Outside, the night air was cooler. The sounds of the city faded, replaced by distant drums from somewhere beyond the walls, a reminder that the land still breathed. The elder stopped beneath a tall tree planted at the center of the courtyard, its roots pushed against the stone tiles, refusing to be hidden. "I knew your mother," the elder said softly. The words struck Kabbalah like thunder. "She came to us afraid," the elder continued, "carrying a child marked by history. We swore to protect that child." Kabbalah's hands trembled. "Why was I sent away?" he asked. "Because some truths attract danger," the elder replied, "and some bloodlines frighten those who stow power." The elder gestured toward the cloth bundle. "That symbol you carry, it belongs to a house older than this city." Kabbalah's heart pounded. Memories aligned the elder's whispers. Mometebis. Warnings, The silence surrounding his birth. Tonight, the elder said, was meant to shame you. He placed a hand on Kabilo's shoulder, but the ancestors rarely arrive uninvited. Inside the hall, Naledi paced, unsettled. She could feel the night shifting, slipping beyond her control. She did not yet know the full truth, but she could sense it. Her joke had awakened something ancient, and it was no longer willing to remain buried. The night no longer felt light. Inside the grand hall, music continued to play, but it sounded distant. Nahala, like drums beaten without spirit. Conversations restarted in whispers, careful and unsure. People glanced toward the courtyard again and again, where Caballo had disappeared with the elder. Madame Naledi felt something she had not felt in years. Uncertainty. She stood near the center of the hall, her posture rigid, her smile forced. Power had always obeyed her. Rooms bent when she entered. But tonight, the room was bending away. "Where is Baba Sefu?" someone asked quietly. "He never leaves gatherings early," another replied. Naledi tightened her grip on her glass. "This is ridiculous," she told herself. "He's just a driver." Yet her heart disagreed. Outside, beneath the old tree whose roots cracked stone without apology, Baba Sefu spoke again. His voice was low, steady, shaped by decades of holding secrets. "Your mother begged us to hide you," he said. "Not from poverty, but from pride." Caballo listened, every word settling deep inside him. He did not interrupt. In Malapo, children were taught that when elders spoke of the past, you listened with your whole body. She knew her blood carried history. Baba Sefu continued, "And history is dangerous when the wrong hands touch it." Caballo exhaled slowly. "Why now?" he asked. "Why tonight?" The elder looked back toward the glowing hall. "Because arrogance invites revelation. Your humiliation was the knock." Destiny answered. Caballo lowered his eyes. "I do not want trouble," he said honestly. "I only want peace." Baba Sefu smiled faintly. "Peace is rarely given to those born to correct imbalance." Inside the hall, Naledi could no longer pretend. She motioned to one of her aides. "Find out what is happening," she whispered sharply. But before the aide could move, Baba Sefu and Caballo the hall stilled. They did not rush. They walked side by side, one old, one humble, but something about their alignment shifted the air. Eyes followed them. Whispers died before forming. Baba Sefu raised his hand. "Turn the music off," he said. "No one arrogant." Silence fell like a heavy cloth. He turned to the guests. "Tonight," he said, "was meant for celebration, but the ancestors have redirected our steps." Naledi stepped forward, her voice tight. "With respect, Baba, this is my event." The elder faced her calmly. "And yet it is no longer yours alone." A murmur rippled through the room. Baba Sefu gestured toward Caballo. "This man has been treated as less than human in this hall." Naledi laughed sharply. "He is my employee." "Employment does not erase dignity," the elder replied. He turned to Caballo. "Speak," he said gently. Caballo's chest tightened. All eyes were on him now, the same eyes that had mocked him earlier. He remembered MMA Tebe's words. "Do not fight back. Endure." "I came because I was invited," Caballo said calmly. "I did not come to be seen. I came to respect." Someone scoffed nervously. Baba Sefu raised his voice slightly. "Respect is not assigned by wealth. It is recognized by spirit." He reached into his robe and pulled out a small leather-bound book, old and worn. "Some names," he said, "are written in places money cannot reach." Noladi's face paled. "Enough of this," she snapped. "This is embarrassing." Baba Sefu's eyes hardened not with anger, but with resolve. "Yes," he said. "It is." He turned back to Caballo. "There is one question that must be answered tonight," he said. "And once it is, nothing here will remain the same." The guests leaned forward, breath held. Baba Sefu pointed gently at the cloth bundle beneath Caballo's jacket. "What you carry," he said, "will either silence this room forever or awaken it." Cabello's hand moved slowly toward the bundle. The whole held its breath, and somewhere beyond the walls, distant drums answered low, steady, inevitable. Cabello's fingers rested on the cloth bundle beneath his jacket, but he did not open it. Not yet. In the villages of his childhood, elders taught that truth must arrive on its own feet. If forced, it stumbled. If rushed, it wounded the innocent. Caballo felt the weight of every eye in the hall pressing against his back, but he remained still, breathing slowly, grounding himself like the old baobab trees. Baba Safu watched him closely. The elder nodded almost imperceptibly, as if satisfied with Caballo's restraint. Not all doors are opened by hands, Baba Safu said to the room. Some open only when the heart is ready. The guests shifted uneasily. They had come for laughter and spectacle. Instead, they were being pulled into something older, something that did not care about wealth or reputation. Naledi forced a smile. Baba, you speak in riddles, she said. If there is something to be said, say it. Baba Sefu turned to her, his voice calm but unyielding. Riddles exist because some ears hear only what pleases them. A few guests looked away. Others stared openly now, sensing that this was no longer entertainment. The elder gestured toward Cablo. This man was raised by the land, he said. You can hear it in his silence. You can see it in the way he stands. He carries himself like someone who has been taught not to waste words. Caballo felt a tightening in his chest, not pride, but recognition. In Malapo, posture was language. Silence was speech. Baba Safu continued. There are many here who wear fine clothes but cannot carry themselves without noise. A ripple of discomfort passed through the hall. Naledi's jaw tightened. You are insulting my guests. I am describing them, the elder replied. He turned back to Caballo. Come, he said gently. Walk with me. They moved toward the front of the hall, toward the space where Naledi had earlier stood like a queen among admirers. The shift was unmistakable. People stepped aside without thinking. Respect was moving faster than logic. As they reached the center, Baba Safu raised his walking stick and struck the floor once. The sound echoed. In our traditions, he said, when the ground is struck, it means attention is demanded, not requested. He looked around the room. I ask you all, when did we decide that money could erase lineage? Silence answered. Naledi's voice came sharp. This man is nothing more than Baba Safu cut her off with a raised hand. Careful, he warned. Words, once released, cannot be recalled, and some words call ancestors. The warning chilled the room. Caballo felt his pulse slow. A strange calm wrapped around him, as if the ground beneath his feet recognized him. He remembered fetching water before sunrise, kneeling before elders, listening to stories meant to prepare him for moments he could never imagine. This was one of those moments. Baba Sefu leaned toward Caballo. You stand between two worlds, sighed softly. One that mocked you, one that remembers you. Caballo swallowed. I do not seek to cross, he replied. I only wish to stand. The elder smiled a small, proud smile. That, he said, is why the crossing has already begun. He turned to the crowd. Tomorrow, he announced, the council of elders will gather. What has been hidden will be weighed. A gasp rippled through the hall. Naledi stepped back, her confidence finally cracking. You cannot do this, she said. This is my house. Baba Sefu met her gaze. It is built on land, sighed simply, and land remembers. Caballo stood quietly as the night shifted around him. The doorway had opened not with noise, not with defiance, but with dignity. And once dignity steps forward, nothing can push it back. The drums beyond the city walls began to beat again, closer now, louder. The crossing had begun. By the time dawn approached, the grand estate no longer felt like a place of celebration. It felt like a gathering ground, one of those sacred spaces in the villages where laughter fell silent and truth was called forward to stand alone. Word had traveled faster than expected. In African societies, secrets rarely survive the night. They move through whispers, through drums, through the quiet authority of elders who know how to summon attention without raising their voices. By morning, Baba Sefu's call had reached beyond the city walls. Elders from nearby regions arrived wrapped in traditional cloth, walking with staffs polished by time. They came not as guests, but as witnesses. The gathering shifted from luxury to tradition. Chairs were rearranged into a wide circle in the open courtyard. The music was gone. The lights were dimmed. In their place stood burning torches, and the steady presence of those whose authority did not come from wealth, but from memory. Caballo stood at the edge of the circle. Though he was surrounded by people, he felt strangely alone. His simple clothes contrasted sharply with the fine garments around him. Yet for the first time, no one laughed. Eyes followed him with curiosity. Some may we'd fear others, with something closer to awe. Naledi sat stiffly among her peers, her jewelry heavy against her skin. The confidence she wore so easily the night before now felt like borrowed clothing. She could sense the room had changed allegiance not to Caballo, but to truth itself. Baba Sefu stepped into the center. In our culture, he began, no truth is spoken without witnesses. No accusation stands without balance, and no revelation arrives without consequence. He turned slowly, his gaze passing over every face. Tonight, we are not here to shame. We are here to remember. An elder woman stood and approached Caballo. Her eyes softened as she studied him. She reached for his hands, turning them gently, examining the lines on his palms as if reading a map written long ago. These hands know labor, she said, but they also know restraint. Another elder stepped forward, pointing to the cloth bundle beneath Caballo's jacket. What you carry, he said, has been waiting. The courtyard held its breath. With slow, deliberate movements, Caballo removed the bundle. His hands did not tremble. He knelt, as tradition demanded, and carefully unfolded the cloth. Inside lay a carved wooden symbol worn smooth by time. It bore markings known only to a few, patterns older than the city, older than written records. A murmur rose among the elders. Nolade's heart pounded. She leaned forward, her voice sharp. This is nonsense. Anyone could carve wood. Baba Sefu turned to her. Yes, he said. Anyone can carve wood, but not everyone knows what to carve. He raised the symbol high. This mark belongs to the house of Kagotso, he declared, a lineage believed lost. The name struck the courtyard like a drumbeat. Some elders gasped. Others bowed their heads. Noladi's face drained of color. She had heard that name before in old business deals. Whispered warnings, contracts that failed without explanation. The elder woman spoke again. Only one child was said to survive, she said. He didn't to protect balance. All eyes returned to Caballo. He felt the weight of their gazes, heavy but not cruel. I am only a driver, he said quietly. Baba Sefu shook his head. No, he replied. You are a man raised to endure before leading. Silence fell. The circle closed slightly. Not in threat, but in acceptance. Caballo realized then that truth had entered not loudly, not violently but with patience. Naledi sat frozen, her earlier laughter echoing painfully in her memory. The joke she had planned now stood before her as judgment not from Caballo, but from history itself. The elders nodded among themselves. The final confirmation would come soon, and when it did, nothing in Zamora would remain the same. The courtyard felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves had leaned in to listen. The wooden symbol lay in Baba Sefu's hands, lifted just high enough for the elders to see clearly. Firelight danced across its carved lines, revealing patterns that were never meant for decoration. These were markings of memory signs, taught from elder to elder, never written, never spoken lightly. An old man stepped forward, his walking stick tapping softly against the stone. His voice, when he spoke, carried the gravel of age and authority. This symbol, he said, is not shown in open places. It is revealed only when balance is threatened. He turned his gaze to Caballo. Child, do you know what you carry? Caballo shook his head slowly. I only know it was given to me with a warning, he replied. To endure. The elder nodded. That is how heirs are raised far from praise, close to hardship. A low murmur moved through the circle. Noleti rose suddenly from her seat. "This is madness," she said, her voice cracking despite her effort to remain composed. "You are turning my home into a village courtroom." Baba Safu faced her calmly. "No," he said. "We are turning it into what the land requires." He gestured to another elder, a woman wrapped in deep indigo cloth. She stepped forward holding a small leather pouch. From it, she removed a brittle strip of animal hide, covered in faded symbols. "This record was kept when cities were still dust," she said. "It speaks of a child, taken away, under moonless skies. A child whose name was hidden to prevent bloodshed." She paused, then looked directly at Kabbalah. "That child was named Kabbalah Kagotso." The name struck like thunder. Kabbalah felt his knees weaken. The sound of it, his full name, echoed inside him in a way nothing else ever had. Memory stirred, his mother's tears, the elder's fear, MMA Tebez. Strict silence. Naledi staggered back as if struck. "No," she whispered. "That family was erased. Erased from power." Baba Safu corrected. "Not from blood." The elder man with the walking stick lifted his chin. "The house of Kagotso ruled by restraint," he said. "They believed leadership was service. That belief made them dangerous to those who ruled by greed." Silence swallowed the courtyard. Kabbalah finally spoke. "If this is true," he said carefully, "why was I allowed to suffer? Why was I mocked, used, humiliated?" The indigo-clad elder met his eyes. "Because a tree that grows in open fields snaps in strong wind," she said. "But one that grows among rocks learns how to bend." Baba Safu placed the symbol back into Kabilo's hands. "Tonight," he said, "you were mocked. To test your spirit, and you passed." Nalade's voice broke. "I did not know," she said weakly. "I swear I did not know." Kabalo looked at her then. Really looked. He saw not a monster but a woman drunk on power, now sober with fear. "I believe you," he said quietly. The words surprised everyone. "Knowing is not the same as respecting," he added, "and respect is where balance was lost." The elders exchanged glances. This was not the response they expected. Baba Safu's lips curved into the faintest smile. "The ancestors chose well," he murmured. He raised his staff. "The revelation is complete," he announced. "But revelation is not the end. It is the beginning of responsibility." The fire crackled. Somewhere beyond the walls, dawn birds began to sing. Kabalo stood in the center of the circle, not elevated, not bowed but steady. A man who had walked through humiliation without bitterness. The city of Zamora had witnessed wealth many times before. But that morning, it witnessed something far rarer. A name returned, and with it, a destiny that could no longer be ignored. When the elders began to disperse, they did not leave in haste. In African tradition, important gatherings end slowly, allowing spirits to settle and words to find their place in the heart. The courtyard remained heavy with meaning, as if the stones beneath their feet were still absorbing what had been spoken. Kabalo sat alone, beneath the old tree. The wooden symbol rested in his palms, warmer now, as though it had been waiting for this moment to awaken fully. The name Kabalo Kagotso echoed in his thoughts, refusing to sit quietly. It was not pride that unsettled him. It was responsibility. All his life, he had learned how to survive without being seen. Now, the world had looked at him and it expected something. Baba Safu approached slowly and lowered himself onto the bench beside him. For a long while, neither spoke. Above them, the branches rustled softly, carrying the distant sound of morning drums from the outskirts of the city. "You are thinking of escape," the elder said at last. Kabalo did not deny it. "In Malapo," he replied, "a man who discovers too much often loses peace." Baba Safu nodded. "That is true, but a man who hides from truth loses himself." Kabalo traced the carvings on the symbol with his thumb. "I was content driving a car," he said. "No one expected anything from me. And yet," Baba Safu replied gently, "you endured humiliation without breaking. That was preparation." Across the courtyard, Naledi stood watching from a distance. Her world had tilted. The power she once wore so easily now felt like a borrowed cloak slipping from her shoulders. She wanted to approach Caballo to speak, but fear held her still. Baba Sefu followed Caballo's gaze. "She will come," he said. "But not yet." Caballo exhaled. "What happens now?" The elder leaned forward, resting his staff against his knee. "Now the council must meet again. Proof must be examined. Not all will accept what was revealed tonight." "Why?" Caballo asked. The truth was clear. Baba Sefu smiled sadly. Truth threatens comfort, and comfort fights back. The elder lowered his voice. "There are families in Zamora whose power rests on the fall of the House of Kago. They will not welcome your return." Caballo's chest tightened. "I do not want to fight anyone." "You may not have a choice," Baba Sefu said, "but remember your ancestors did not rule by force." As the sun climbed higher, servants began clearing the courtyard. The elite guests departed quietly, their laughter replaced by whispers of fear and curiosity. By midday, the estate felt strangely empty. Naledi finally approached. She stopped a few steps away, unsure of her place. "Caballo," she said softly, tasting his name as if it were new. "I owe you more than an apology." Caballo rose slowly and faced her. "You owe yourself humility," he replied calmly. "That is heavier than apology." Tears filled her eyes. She nodded once. "I will step back," she said. "From business. From influence. I will not stand in the way of what must happen." Baba Sefu watched silently. As Naledi walked away, Caballo felt no triumph, only relief. Vengeance had no place in what was unfolding. That evening, as the city settled, Baba Sefu handed Caballo a sealed message. "This summons you to the Council of Elders," he said. At sunrise, Caballo accepted it with steady hands. He returned to his small room that night, but it no longer felt the same. The walls seemed thinner, the silence louder. He lay awake, listening to the city breathe. Knowing had changed everything, and yet the true test still waited ahead. At dawn, Caballo would stand before those who shaped fate itself, and not all of them would welcome him. Dawn arrived without celebration. In Zamora, mornings usually burst to life, with noise engines roaring, vendors shouting, the restless energy of people chasing wealth. But on this morning, the city seemed to hold its breath. A thin mist hovered above the streets as Caballo walked toward the council grounds. His steps measured, his mind steady. The council met where the city ended, and tradition began. A wide open space lay beyond the concrete roads, bordered by tall trees and carved wooden posts, darkened by age. This was not a place of luxury. It was a place of memory. Here, no title carried weight, unless the ancestors allowed it. Caballo arrived, dressed simply, the wooden symbol hidden beneath his clothing. He removed his shoes before stepping onto the packed earth, pressing his feet firmly into the soil. Mama Teba's voice echoed in his mind. "The ground will know you before men do." The elders sat in a wide circle, men and women whose faces carried the map of many seasons. Some watched Caballo with open curiosity. Others studied him with guarded eyes. Power was present here, but it was quiet, patient, and dangerous. Baba Sefu rose and struck the ground once with his staff. "This council is called to listen," he announced. "Not to pride, not to fear." An elder with sharp eyes spoke first. "We have heard the claims," he said. "Bloodlines long buried are easily imagined." Another elder added, "Many have won false heritage to gain power." Caballo stood silently. He did not argue. In Malapo, children were taught that when elders doubted you, your character spoke louder than your mouth. Baba Sefu turned to him. "Do you bring anything before this council?" Caballo nodded and knelt. Slowly, he unwrapped the cloth bundle and placed the wooden symbol on the ground at the center of the circle. A murmur rippled through the elders. One by one, they leaned forward to inspect it. Fingers traced the carvings. Eyes widened. Memories stirred. An elder woman whispered, This mark was burned from memory during the purges. Another elder shook his head slowly. Yet here it stands. The sharp-eyed elder looked at Caballo. If you are who you are said to be, a challenge Ed, why did you serve another with your hands? Caballo raised his gaze calmly. Because I was taught that leadership begins with service, he replied, and that pride reveals weakness. Silence followed. A man who ruled a powerful family leaned forward. What do you seek now? He asked. Land, power, revenge. Caballo shook his head. I seek balance. Aside simply, and the right to walk without being trampled. The elders exchanged looks. This answer unsettled them more than ambition ever could. Baba Safu spoke again. Let it be known, he said, that endurance without bitterness is a rare inheritance. A long pause followed. Finally, the eldest among them, a woman whose voice had ended, War spoke. Blood may call you, she said, but blood alone does not crown a leader. She studied Caballo closely. You will be tested. Caballo bowed his head. I welcome it. The elder nodded, then rise. Caballo stood. The council did not shout. They did not cheer, but something shifted quietly, deeply. The balance of the circle adjusted to make space for him. As the meeting adjourned, Baba Sefu leaned close. Today, you face power with silence, he said. Few survive that. Caballo exhaled slowly. Outside the council grounds, the city began to stir again, unaware that its future had just taken a subtle turn. The test had begun, and silence, once his shield, was becoming his strength. The council's decisions spread through Zamora like smoke carried by a stubborn wind. By midday, whispers had reached every corner of the city from the crowded markets where women sold groundnuts under the sun, to the toll offices where power hid behind glass. Some spoke Caballo's name with curiosity, others with suspicion. A few with fear. The elders had not crowned him. They had chosen something far more difficult. They had chosen to test him. Caballo was summoned again before sunset. This time, he was led beyond the council grounds, away from the city's edge, toward the old paths that cut through land untouched by concrete. These were ancestral routes, once used for rites of passage long before Zamora existed. The test was not announced loudly. In African tradition, true trials did not require witnesses, they required truth. Baba Sefu walked beside Caballo as they approached a clearing where 3 elders waited. On the ground between them lay a small mound of earth, freshly turned. This land remembers your blood, Baba Sefu said softly, but memory alone is not loyalty. The eldest elder stepped forward. You will face 3 trials, she said. Not of strength, not of wealth, but of character. She pointed to the mound. The first is patience. Caballo was instructed to kneel beside the earth and remain there until called, without food, without shade, without complaint. The sun climbed mercilessly. Sweat soaked his clothes. Insects bit his skin. Passers-by watched from a distance, some mocking, some confused. Caballo did not move. He thought of carrying water in Malapo, of hunger that taught him restraint, of nights he slept without answers. This was familiar ground. When the sun finally dipped, the elders returned. The second trial is truth, the eldest said. A man stepped forward, a former co-worker from the lady's household. He accused Caballo of theft, of plotting, of deceit. Lies were piled carefully, designed to provoke anger. Caballo listened silently. When asked to respond, he spoke only once. I have nothing to hide, he said. Search my life. The elders did. They found no bitterness, no secret schemes, no hunger for revenge. The third trial was the hardest. The final test is forgiveness, the elder said. Naledi was brought forward. She stood before Caballo, stripped of titles, dressed simply, her eyes red with shame. I wronged you, she said, her voice breaking. I used you for amusement. I ask for mercy. The crowd that had gathered leaned forward. This was the moment power often demanded blood. Caballo closed his eyes. He saw Itabe's face. He remembered her words. A man who cannot forgive remains a slave on a throne. He opened his eyes. I forgive you, he said. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry your cruelty inside me. Naledi collapsed in tears. The elders stepped back. The eldest among them raised her staff. The trials are complete, she announced. This man's roots are strong. The land seemed to exhale. Baba Sefu smiled quietly as Caballo rose from the earth, dust clinging to his knees. The crowd watched in silence, not with laughter, not with mockery, but with respect. The city had not yet decided what to do with him, but the ancestors had, and their judgment had been clear. The morning after the trials did not announce itself with drums or proclamations. In Zamora, true change never arrived loudly. Caballo walked through the city as he always had on foot, head slightly lowered, eyes observant. Yet something had shifted. The same streets that once ignored him now seemed to pause. Market women slowed their bargaining. Security men straightened their backs. Even the air felt different, heavier with awareness. Respect had begun to walk behind him. At the marketplace, near the old bus station, Caballo stopped to greet Mama Dira, an elderly woman who sold dried fish. For years, she had watched him pass without speaking. Today, she reached out and touched his arm. You carry yourself like my father did, she said quietly, when men still listened to the land. Caballo smiled gently. I am still learning, Mama. She nodded. That is why people are watching you. Word of the trials had spread, not the details, but the outcome. People spoke of a man who knelt in dust without complaint. A man who listened to lies without anger. A man who forgave power instead of bowing to it. In African cities, stories travel faster than truth, but this time the truth walked ahead of the story. By midday, Caballo was summoned again, not by the elders, but by the community council of Malapo village. He returned home for the first time since the revelations. Malapo welcomed him with cautious eyes. Mud houses still stood where they always had. Children still chased chickens through narrow paths. Life had not changed, but hearts were shifting. Under the large fig tree, the villagers gathered. The headman, old and bent with years, rose slowly. You left here as a boy with empty hands, he said. You return as a man carrying heavy questions. Caballo bowed his head. I return as one of you. A young man stepped forward. They say you are royalty. Caballo looked at him steadily. They say many things, he replied. What matters is what I do now. An elder woman cleared her throat. Then do something, she said. That was how it began, not with speeches but with work. Caballo helped repair a broken well. He listened to disputes between families. He sat with widows and orphans, not as a savior, but as a listener. When food ran short, he shared what little he had. When voices rose, Ikalmed people noticed. He does not rush, they whispered. He does not promise what he cannot give. He listens like an elder, not like a ruler. Even those who doubted him could not deny the change his presence brought. By Kinsamora, the elite grew uneasy. Meetings were held behind closed doors. Old families spoke of influence slipping quietly through their fingers. A man who ruled without demanding loyalty was dangerous. Naledi watched from a distance. She had stepped away from her businesses as promised. For the first time, she saw the city without filters of power, and everywhere she looked, she heard his name not with mockery, but with trust. One evening, Baba Sefu joined Caballo at the edge of the village, watching the sun fall behind the hills. You are gathering people without calling them, the elder said. Caballo sighed. I am only doing what I was taught. Baba Sefu smiled. That is how true leadership begins. But power will respond, Caballo said quietly. And not kindly. Yes, Baba Sefu agreed. When respect grows, fear follows. As night settled, drums echoed faintly from a neighboring village, rhythms of gathering, of movement. Change was no longer waiting, it was walking, and Caballo stood at its center, not raised above others, but rooted among them, unaware that the next step forward would force him to choose between peace and confrontation. The rise had begun, and it would not go unnoticed. Power came looking for Caballo long before he went looking for it. It arrived not with crowns or drums, but with problems. At dawn, people People began gathering outside the fig tree in Malapo farmers, with land disputes. Traders cheated by middlemen. Families divided by old grudges. They did not call Caballo a leader. They simply waited for him to sit. And when he did, they spoke. In African tradition, a man who listens without interrupting earns more authority than one who speaks loudly. Caballo listened until the sun climbed high, his feet dusty, his throat dry. When he finally spoke, his words were few. Return what is not yours. Share the water. Sit together before you fight. Some were disappointed. They wanted dramatic judgments. Others felt exposed. Confirmation of wrongdoing stung more than punishment. But slowly, things began to change. A stolen goat was returned. The boundary stone was moved back to its rightful place. Two brothers who had not spoken in 10 years shared a meal again. Just as Caballo believed, was not about winning it, was about restoring balance. News of this reached Zamora's elite faster than comfort allowed. At a private estate on the city's hill, powerful men gathered. Their chairs were soft, their drinks expensive, but their faces were tense. He is building loyalty without paying for it, one man said. People follow him willingly, another added. That is dangerous. A woman with influence leaned forward. Then provoke him, she suggested. Power reveals itself under pressure. Their opportunity came soon. A violent clash erupted near the industrial zone between workers and private guards. Property was destroyed. Blood was spilled. The city demanded someone to blame. Caballo was summoned not as an official, but as a voice the people trusted. He arrived at the scene dressed simply. Police watched him warily. Workers watched him with hope. A young man shouted, "They beat us like animals." A guard yelled back. They tried to burn the factory. Tension crackled like dry grass before fire. Caballo raised his hand not high, not dramatic, just enough to be seen. Everyone steps back, aside calmly. To their surprise, they did. He walked between the groups, barefoot on broken glass and dust. He listened to both sides. He asked questions others had avoided. When lies surfaced, he named them without humiliation. Pain does not excuse cruelty, he said, and authority does not excuse silence. By nightfall, an agreement was reached. Wages were reviewed. Guards were dismissed. Compensation was promised. No one cheered, but no one fought either. The next day, a rumor spread. He could not be controlled. Naledi heard it too. She found Caballo at the village edge, repairing a fence with his hands. "You are becoming something they fear," she said. Caballo did not look up. "Fear is not my goal, but it will find you anyway," she replied. That night, Baba Safu warned him. Power that refuses cruelty threatens those who rely on it. Caballo stared into the fire, then let them learn another way. The elder nodded slowly. "That is why your ancestors fell," he sighed softly, "and why they may rise again through you beyond Molapo drums. Beat louder." Meetings multiplied. Lines were being drawn to lay carefully. Caballo's influence had crossed an invisible boundary, and now the city's old power structures were preparing their response. The question was no longer whether Caballo would lead. It was whether leadership could survive without becoming cruel. The elders chose the day carefully. In African tradition, certain truths are not revealed when the sun is harsh or when the night is restless. They are spoken when the earth is calm, when shadows are soft, and the ancestors are believed to walk close. At first light, drums sounded from the old grounds beyond Zamora. Not loud, not celebratory or slow. Deliberate beats that carried meaning. By mid-morning, people were already moving toward the ancestral field. Villagers from Malapo, workers from the city, elders wrapped in worn cloth, children clinging to their mothers. Something final was coming. Caballo stood apart, dressed in plain white fabric, feet bare against the soil. Baba Sefu adjusted the cloth over his shoulders with the care of a father, not an elder. "Today," he said quietly, "your name will no longer belong only to you." Caballo nodded. His chest felt tight, not with fear, but with weight. At the center of the field, a sacred fire burned. The elders formed a wide circle around it. At the far side stood those who had once ruled through fear-watching, silent, powerless to stop what tradition had set in motion. The eldest woman, Elder, stepped forward. Long ago, she began, the House of Kagotso was silenced not because it failed, but because it refused cruelty. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Today, she continued, we return what was buried. She raised her staff and called Kabbalah forward. He walked slowly, each step echoing against the stillness. He knelt before the fire. Baba Safu presented the wooden symbol, now polished with oil and ash. The elder held it high. This mark belongs to one bloodline, she declared, carried by those who served before they ruled. She turned to Kabalo. Speak your name. Kabalo swallowed. I am Kabalo, he said. Son of Momitebi, child of Malapo. The elder nodded. And before the ancestors, Kabalo closed his eyes. I am Kabalo Kagotso, he said, of the line that chose dignity over dominance. A deep silence followed. Then the drums changed. The rhythm shifted into an old pattern, one not heard publicly in generations. Elder women began to hum. Men lowered their heads. Some wept not from joy, but from remembrance. The elder placed the symbol into Kabalo's hands. Your lineage is confirmed, she announced. By blood, by trial, by character. The crowd erupted not in chaos, but in reverence. Those who once mocked him stood frozen. The joke had ended. History had answered. Noledi watched with tears streaming freely. She saw not a man rising above others, but one being placed back where he belonged among them. The elder raised her staff once more. Let it be known, she said, that leadership has returned not to rule, but to restore. Kabbalah rose slowly. He looked out over the people, farmers, laborers, elders, children. He lifted his hands, palms open. I did not seek this, he said, but I will not run from it. He paused. If I fail you, he continued, remove me. If I forget where I came from, remind me. Power that forgets its roots poisons the land. The elders nodded. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman whispered, the ancestors have spoken. As the sun reached its highest point, the ceremony ended. But the story did not, because once a name is spoken before the ancestors, it cannot be taken back. And Kavelo and Kagotso now carried a legacy that would demand everything he had, especially when the old powers made their final move. Recognition brought consequences faster than celebration. By the second morning after the ancestral ceremony, the old power structures of Zamora began to shake. Offices that once decided fate behind closed doors suddenly found themselves questioned in open spaces. Workers refused silence. Villages sent representatives. Even the city guards hesitated before acting, and all roads led to one question. What would Kabalo Kagotso do with this authority? The elders did not wait for chaos. A public gathering was called at the old square, the place where judgments had been made long before courts and uniforms. People arrived early, carrying stools, mats, children on their backs. This was not a trial of one man. It was a reckoning of many. Those accused of abusing power were summoned. They came dressed well, surrounded by lawyers and aides, their faces tight with controlled anger. Among them were men who had ordered beatings, stolen land, silenced voices. They expected humiliation. They prepared for revenge. Kabalo arrived last. He wore no special garment, carried no staff. He walked into the circle and sat on the ground with everyone else. The crowd murmured. An elder spoke. You have been wronged, he said to Kabalo. Your family erased, your dignity mocked. The law allows punishment, Kabilo Nothedi. It does, he agreed. He turned toward the accused. But the ancestors taught us that punishment alone does not heal land, he said. Only truth does. One by one, the elders asked questions. Records were read. Witnesses spoke. The lies that had built empires began to crumble under the weight of memory. A powerful man stood and shouted, You want to destroy us. Kabbalah met his eyes calmly. No, he replied. You destroyed yourselves when you forgot people were human. Silence followed. When judgment time came, the crowd leaned forward. Caballo stood. Those who stole land will return it, he said. Those who profited from suffering will fund repair. Those who ordered violence will face the law openly. No public shaming. No blood. No exile. A woman in the crowd cried out, "Is that all?" Caballo turned to her gently. If we mirror cruelty, he said, we teach it to our children. Some were disappointed. Others felt relief. Naledi stepped forward unexpectedly. Se knelt. I benefited from this system, she said loudly. I accept responsibility. Caballo looked at her for a long moment. Then use what you have left to rebuild what was broken, he said. That'll be your justice. The elders nodded. The gathering ended quietly. That night, as the city settled, Baba Sefu sat beside Caballo. They will say you were soft, the elder warned. Caballo stared into the darkness. Let them, he said. Soft earth grows crops. Hard ground grows nothing. Beyond the hills, drums sounded not of war, but of healing. Justice had been served, and for the first time in a long while, it did not leave a bitter taste behind. Peace did not arrive. Like a visitor, it crept in slowly, the way rain soaks dry ground quietly, patiently, without asking permission. Weeks passed after the judgments. Zamora did not collapse, as some had predicted. It adjusted. Markets reopened with fairer prices. Workers returned to their jobs with heads held higher. In Malapo, children played without fear of hunger, chasing them home too early. The land was breathing again. Caballo traveled often not in convoys, but in shared taxis and on foot. He visited forgotten villages, sat under trees whose names had been lost, listened to elders who had not been asked for their wisdom in years. He did not announce plans. He asked questions. What does your land need? What was taken from you? What must be protected? In the northern plains, farmers spoke of water stolen by pipes, redirected toward factories. Within days, the flow was restored. In the coastal settlements, fishermen complained of permits sold to outsiders. Caballo canceled them. Every decision carried a message. People before profit. Some in the city called it naive. But when harvest season arrived, granaries filled. When school terms began, children returned with books paid for by recovered funds. Results silenced doubt better than speeches ever could. Naledi worked quietly. She sold property, funded clinics, reopened schools she once ignored. She did not seek praise. Shame had become her teacher. In service, she found something like peace. One afternoon, she met Caballo at the edge of Malapo. You could have destroyed me, she said. Caballo shook his head. Destruction is easy, he replied. Repair is harder. She bowed her head. Thank you. That evening, elders gathered again but not for judgment. They came to observe. Baba Safouv watched Caballo sit among villagers, laughing with children, sharing roasted maize. He turned to the eldest woman elder. He leads without sitting above, he said. She smiled. That is why the land accepts him. As the dry season ended, the first rains came early. Thunder rolled gently, not violently. Old men smiled at the sky. The ancestors approve, they whispered. But peace always attracts envy. Beyond Zamora, neighboring powers took notice. Trade routes shifted. Influence changed hands. Messages arrived wrapped in polite words, but sharp intentions. Baba Sefu warned him one night. Stability makes others nervous. Caballo knowed it. Then we remain rooted. He stood at the hill, overlooking the city and village Aliklet, and shadow, old and new. For the first time, it felt balanced, yet Caballo knew this calm was not the end. It was the foundation, the kind that could either hold generations or be tested by storms yet to come. As the rain fell softly on the land, people slept with hope instead of fear. And for now, that was victory enough. Years later, people would struggle to remember the exact day Zamora changed. Not because it was unimportant, but because it did not happen all at once. It happened in moments. in the way elders were consulted again, in the way children learned history without shame, in the way power learned to lower its voice. Caballo Cogozzo grew older, but never distant. His hair silvered early, kissed by sun and responsibility. Yet he still walked the same paths through Malapo, greeted by names, not titles. When people bowed, Elifted Tem. When praise followed him, he redirected it toward the land. The ground carried us first, he would say. We only carry each other. Under the great fig tree, a new generation gathered boys and girls who had never known hunger as certainty. They listened as Caballo spoke, not of his rise, but of his mistakes. Leadership, he told them, is not about being seen. It is about being remembered kindly. Naledi lived nearby, her wealth long redistributed. She became known not as a woman of power, but as one of service. The two spoke rarely of the past. Some stories did not need retelling. One evening, Baba Sifu sat beside Caballo as the sun melted into the horizon. You changed the course of things, the elder said. Caballo smiled softly. No, he replied. I stepped out of the way so the land could remember itself. When Baba Sifu passed, the morning was deep but peaceful. Drums beat slow and steady. Caballo led the procession on foot, carrying the elder's staff nod as inheritance. But as tribute, he placed it beside the ancestral fire and stepped back. Time moved forward. New leaders rose trained in listening, not domination. Laws were written with elders present. Markets grew. So did restraint. And when Caballo finally returned to the earth, it was not in silence. The entire land gathered. No gold marked his resting place. Only a tree planted by children, watered by those he had once served beside. Years later, travelers would stop there and ask, who rests here? The elders would answer simply, a man who was invited to be mocked, and left behind a legacy that could not be mocked. And when the wind passed through the leaves, some swore they could hear his voice. Not commanding, not demanding, only reminding. Power fades. Dignity endures, and the land never forgets.